Hi, Yaroslava. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good as well. Thank you so much. All right. So before we start, Yaroslava, you would have given the consent of recording this meeting. You're good with that?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Great. All right. Okay. All right. So let me give me my quick introduction. So I'm Nashant. I hold more than 19 years of experience now. It's been 14 years into testing and then rest into project management. Okay. All
That's
right. How about
impressive.
your?
Yeah, so I have overall of 11 years of experience in QA, both as a QA engineer, and now I mostly run QA lead positions.
Great. All right. Okay. Good to hear that. Okay. So let me quickly first tell you about the QA pillars. So QA pillars helps you to kind of empowers professionals to reach the full potential so that they can advance in the career. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with the interview. You have chosen the topics like STLC, then release management, test execution, and test management. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Okay. Okay. So let's start with SDLC. So which development lifecycle model is adopted in your organization?
Sorry,
Which
which
software
one?
deliver which software development lifecycle is adopted in your organization?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we use at the moment we use like actually the mix of waterfall and Scrum.
Okay. All right.
So
No,
we're
that's fine.
working mostly on waterfall, but then migrating to Scrum, but it's still not as clear as it could be.
No problem. No problem. It takes some time to adopt Scrum fully. That's okay. And so, what is the test process in your organization? How does that work?
Um, yeah, so we work based on sprints and the whole project, I mean, and QA team, testing team. Each sprint has the repeating cycle of requirements review and analysis, test case preparation, test design, then test execution, bug verification, and UAT support.
Great.
And
Okay.
then release
All right.
management, and the cycle goes over again.
Okay. All right. Understood. Okay. And which all test phases are there? And does those align with the test environments which you have? So
Uh,
the phases. Mhm.
yes,
Go on.
so the component testing phase is usually done on dedicated QA servers. And before start of client's UAT, we migrate to staging environment where internal QA team performs regression testing alongside with UAT. And then a
Uh,
sanity check is done on production.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying the three environments where first is done as used as for component testing, second staging is used for UAT, third is production, is it?
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. Okay. And so you have these three phases, right? One is component testing, one is kind of UAT testing, and third is you do sanity in production. That's it?
No, it's actually we do have other stages. We have component testing, we have integration testing, then we have regression testing and UAT. And
Okay,
then,
okay.
yes, again,
All
sanity
right,
on production.
all right. Okay, okay. Cool. Good to know that. So component and integration testing happens on two different environment or on one environment?
It's mostly one environment
One
integration.
environment.
Yes, but
Okay.
then when on the other environment, on staging, we do perform end-to-end testing within and regression.
End-to-end testing and regression and UAT as well.
Yeah, but UAT is
Okay.
done by other team. by
All right.
clients.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. All right. Good to know that. Okay. So, suppose you have got two testers in your team. Okay.
Mhm.
At the moment, how many testers you are leading with? How many testers are there
Um,
in your team?
3.
Three testers. Okay. Let's take the three only. Suppose you've got three testers in your team, and in the sprint planning which is happening, uh, the Scrum Master says that we have to pick 10 stories. Okay.
10 stories.
10 stories in that
Oh.
in the sprint. Okay. Your sprint
Mhm.
is 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
It's 4
Sprint
weeks.
duration? 4 weeks. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So suppose your Scrum Master says that you've got three testers. We are picking 20 stories in one sprint of 4 weeks. Okay.
Mhm.
How would you plan for their testing? What do you do that?
Yeah, so we cannot plan testing itself without obviously involving in planning of developer
Mhm.
development teams. So it will we will plan closely with dev team in which sequence these stories are developed and are arriving in testing. So I'll probably have given that scope each QA engineer responsible for separate story for a couple of stories actually, so that the first bunch of stories that will come to testing, each individual engineer will have the story ready for testing. While the development itself is done, we will do requirements review and analysis. Will prepare test cases for the stories that will come to testing first, and then execute component testing, integration testing if needed, and simultaneously write test cases for stories that will be delivered in the next batch within the sprint.
All right. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. But okay, how do you uh, ensure that the testers which you have are not overloaded with the work? So, as I mentioned, you've got three testers, and the Scrum Master says we are picking 20 stories as per the development bandwidth we have. Okay, suppose there are, say, five developers are available in the team. Okay, and he thinks that each story which is being picked up can be developed in 1 week. So, uh, accordingly, the Scrum Master say that we'll be picking 20 stories. Okay,
Yeah.
but you have got three testers only. You believe that you may not be able to complete the testing of all those 20 stories in a sprint. How would you handle this situation? What do you do?
Yes. So, like, first of all, I do estimate before the start of the sprint, I do estimate the planned scope, each task separately, and if it does not fit in QA, I speak to the project manager, to the scrum master, and we don't take it into sprint, or we enlarge QA team, or we move the deadline, which is not possible in Scrum. So it won't be in scope, first of all. But if this situation still happens, as soon as I see that we are not fitting into the schedule, I will raise it to the management, and we will again either remove it from the scope, or possibly talk about some overtimes or something like that if this is required to be in sprint. So, but it's okay that development is done in one phase, in one sprint, and testing is done in another, as long as the story or the stories are not included in release scope.
Okay, okay. And what justification you provide, that on what basis you prove that 20 stories are quite a good work or more than the required work for your three testers? How do you prove that to the Scrum Master?
Well, if the estimation has been done, then just estimation should be enough. Estimation could have been done in different ways, like and it really depends on the story, because some stories may require a little development time and a lot of QA time. For example, if
Right.
large
Mm-hmm.
regression testing is needed,
Mm.
or a lot of cross-browser testing should be performed. So I will rely on estimation. I will
Okay.
rely on necessary QA activities. And yeah, if it doesn't fit by numbers, it just doesn't fit.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fine. Okay. So take a different scenario now. Suppose you have got, again, you've got three testers, and uh, project manager says that we would be picking 10 stories in this sprint. It's a different scenario which I'm giving to you now. So 10 stories would be picking in the sprint. You did your estimation. It feels like there shouldn't be a challenge, and you agreed that. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
you have divided the stories among your tester. The sprint starts. Okay. So once when the stories are being delivered, the execution, your team starts execution, test execution of those stories. Okay. And suppose on the fifth story there is a blocker, and it's a big blocker that you guys feel that you may not be able to complete all 10 stories in one sprint. What do you do in that case?
Okay, so first of all, that it's obvious, but this blocker should be raised in backtracking system as soon as found, and the team should be let know that there is a blocker that might impact the whole scope. And then again, raise to Scrum Master or to Project Manager or whoever is there that that the blocker happened, and we might descope some stories,
Mm-hmm.
and the exact amount will depend on when this blocker is resolved.
Mm-hmm.
If the blocker is related to functionality itself, to the product,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
it's related to environment, or because then we could just move to another environment, for example, as a mitigation.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it depends on the blocker itself. One of possible ways to resolve this is, if this blocker is related to one of the stories, we can just descope that exact story, not to wait until the bug is fixed. And yeah, so descope just one story, rebuild the build, and continue with the rest of the stories.
Okay.
So this
Okay.
is just a bunch of possible scenarios depending on exact situation.
All right. Okay. Okay. Makes sense. All right. Third scenario, a new website is being, I'm not sure what is the nature of the work which you are doing in your organization, but suppose a new website for a client is being developed. Okay.
Okay.
Which all non-functional aspects would you cover in your test plan and in your test execution?
Okay, so I'm working in e-commerce domain now.
Okay.
So yeah, this situation is pretty common.
Right.
Yeah, it will depend on the project scope and
Hmm.
priorities. Um, So I assume, and it's just an assumption, that for the e-commerce website, it will include homepage, search functionality, then product listings and product description
No, no.
pages, then the
All right.
checkout.
I was talking about non-functional aspects. This is
Oh,
all functional
sorry.
aspects.
Sorry, I missed
Right.
that.
No problem. No problem.
Um,
Which all non-functional aspects you would like to cover?
So again, in ideal world, I would expect non-functional requirements to be in place.
Mm-hmm.
And that can include performance requirements,
Mm-hmm.
localization requirements, user experience, if any,
Right.
and accessibility requirements.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Security requirements.
Right.
What is also there? Might be some GDPR requirements.
Okay. All right.
So,
Excellent. Okay. I
mhm.
think you covered most of these. One could be compatibility testing, like so it could be testing on different browser, which we generally say cross-browser testing, testing on
Um,
different OS. We
yeah.
say, yeah.
Ye-
uh,
well, this um, I would say this can be treated as functional testing on the cross-browser functional testing and also compatibility testing. Yeah, it will definitely be included. It's just like how do you call it, functional or non-functional?
Okay. All right. Good that you would include that. Generally, it is included in non-functional, but that's fine. If you think these would be covered in functional in your organization, that's fine. Have you heard about the term called resiliency testing?
I'm sorry, could you say it again?
Have you heard the term called resiliency testing?
No, I'm afraid not.
Resiliency. Okay. So resiliency nowadays is very much important. And what is a resiliency testing is that you need to make sure that the website which is going live, so there may be n number of issues in production, and suppose a user is using your website, e-commerce website, which you have recently made live, and suppose one major service at the backend stops working. Okay, you don't you don't want the user to be seen as a 500 error on your main page, right? Wherein you need to give a pleasant experience to the user, even if there is some issue at the back end. Okay. So, what resiliency testing is, in case any problem happens in any of the backend services, the front end user experience still should be still be a good experience. That there should be a problem pages also should be developed, that in case of any problem, this page would be shown to the user, that say it can be mentioned that there is some issue going on at the moment in our website, we'll come back again shortly, something like that. So shouldn't be a black page or a 500 error page or something which annoys the user, right? So this
Mm-hmm.
is what is a resilient testing, which helps giving a good experience to the user, even if there is some issue at the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, all right, good. So, okay, so let's move forward. Let's talk about maybe something around test execution and management. How do you make sure that the scenarios which are being prepared by your testers are kind of uh, complete and do not miss anything?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think it all starts with preparing test cases that fully cover the functionality. planned, and how do we ensure that, how we can be sure that it's they cover indeed is traceability metrics. When we have requirements listed and then mapped to test cases or checklists that cover this functionality. Even before that, we do proofreading and of requirements to ensure that requirements themselves do not contain any gaps or misreadings, and they are complete. And then when test execution comes, it's just a question of which test cases are planned for this or that story functionality. If they are all executed, what are results? If any test cases are failed, then whether the bugs were raised, fixed, retested, and all the blocked test cases were executed as well. So I believe that's
Okay.
and
But go on.
yeah, just another thought that using test design techniques when writing test cases or checklists is also useful to make sure that requirements are covered fully, but not just in it. One positive test case for one functionality, So
Absolutely. So which all test design techniques you or your team use while preparing the scenario?
Yes, so we greatly use classes of equivalence along with boundary values. We often use state transition testing when it's possible. Oh my God. Pairwise, I want QA engineers to know about pairwise technique, but frankly speaking, it's not very often to be used because it's pretty specific.
That's fine.
Yeah, and decision tables again when it's applicable.
All right. Okay. Good to hear that you cover almost all major test design techniques. Great. Okay. All right. Let me give you a scenario. Considering you have made sure that all scenarios are covered, all the execution has done properly. Suppose there is a issue in production. Okay. And it was a major issue which came in production. Okay. You were told to do analysis as to how this came in production, how it got missed in the non-prod. Okay, you did your analysis and got to know that there was some goof up done by your testers. Okay,
somewhat.
So, some problem was. The analysis says that there may be a miss from your testers.
Okay.
You did your analysis and found out that it was a one simple scenario which should have been executed but got missed. Okay. How would you handle this situation? I mean, what would you do, or what would be your conversation with your testers?
Okay.
Have you come up of any such scenario so far in your career?
Yeah, I think so. But I believe there are some precautions usually done to make sure nothing of planned is missed. So checklists are prepared before the tests start. And it is well known that all test cases should be executed or or the reason why they are not
Mm-hmm.
executed is stated. So it's hard to imagine like that the check, that validate, the verification was just missed. But still, if this happens because of like some other QA engineer missed
Mm-hmm.
it good or anything, yeah, I will probably talk to that person and ask, was it not included on purpose, or that was just a human error, which again should, well, anyway, why did it happen? And depending on the answer on what actually happened, was there a particular reason? Maybe the tool for test cases is not convenient, or they do not how to use it, or maybe they would say that they didn't know that this particular test should be executed. Yeah, it really depends on why this situation happened,
Right.
my
Okay.
further actions.
And what all precautionary measures you would take after this situation? Suppose they say that it got missed. It was there, but somehow it was not executed.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other scenario could be they didn't add it as a scenario. So
So,
the scenario was not at all included. The test case was not there for that particular situation. Hence, all 100% test cases was passed, and they didn't get to know that this also needs to be executed because the test case was not at all there.
mm-hmm,
So what
mm-hmm.
would you do? What would be the precautionary measure you would take?
Yeah. So by the way, it also depends on the bug, what what
Right,
exactly happened. So it
right.
might be that the circumstance, the preconditions of the bug or steps to reproduce are not 100%, it's intermittent. So actually there is no way to prevent this thing.
Mhm.
But assuming that it's a major bug and it's reproducible and it should have been covered, and it wasn't for some reason, um, yeah, well, if it should have been covered but not, why it was not covered? So whether it's missing in requirements, or whether QA engineer was using not the right technique or no test design technique,
Mhm.
or there was some kind of assumption from him or her that this should not be executed. Yeah, so if the problem is with requirements, I will think about improving how key engineers work with requirements, or with how do they prepare test cases. Also, I would, when test cases are prepared, it's a good practice that they are after that reviewed by another QA engineers or QA lead.
Yep.
So if this practice was not in place, I would definitely think of using it, proofreading of test cases.
All right, great. Okay. So the other thing could be that considering the scenario was not there or the test case was not there at all. Now, as a precautionary measure, we can one get that included so that this is added in the regression testing scope. This is one. And second, it is worth checking from our business teams as well or the client teams as well as to your tester may would have missed it, but how come kind of they also missed it, right? That the clients are also doing UAT testing. In case it was a basic scenario, this should have been covered in the client's UAT testing as well. They also missed it, correct? So it is worth checking from their side as well as to how come they missed it, correct? Make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. Good. So now considering the execution, all okay, we have uh, completed execution. Now suppose we are going in production. What all things you ensure that everything is okay to go in production?
Mm-hmm.
It is giving me a reminder that we are left with 5 minutes. Zoom is giving a reminder. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in my current, it depends on the project itself. Technologies are that are used, and for different projects, ensuring that everything is okay for production may be different scope of actions. For my recent experience in my current organization, we do this regression testing on pre-production environment and staging environment. And when so okay, again, it all starts with component testing and integration testing. So
Right.
there, all test cases should be all planned test cases should be executed, and then regression suite that is actually not. I prefer to have regression suite not as one suite that is rerun every time, but rather regression scope is picked from based on impact analysis, so areas that are likely to break down, and also some critical paths of functionality. When this is, again, planned scope is executed and successfully, then release into production is just a matter of small sanity check that will ensure that production is up and running okay, the major functionality works, and that the planned features are in place without deep testing.
Right. Right. All right. If you would have, I hope you understood the question. If you would have heard it properly, it is actually the rephrasing of what are the parameters of your exit criteria. Yeah. So I asked you as to what all things you ensure before going live in production, that things are in right shape. So this is a kind of a rephrase of a question, like what are the parameters of your exit criteria? Okay. So you can clearly think on all those things of what do you include or what is your checklist of the exit criteria, and just you can tell me about that. Correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so planned verifications are executed. We have an approval from client to go to production. Actually, that's the exit criteria we have at the moment.
Right. Right. All right.
And even
Okay.
when other criteria are not met, that's a master criteria.
Okay. Yaroslava, I will have to, apologies for stopping here. It is about to close its recording. So Zoom is for 40 minutes only. But overall, it was a nice conversation. I think you have given right answers for almost all questions. Wherever I think you were missing something, I mentioned you there and then, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Mhm.
As a feedback, you were great in responding to all my questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed the interview and very much,
Hope
and
you
it was
hope you learned something new.
I definitely did, at least that resilience testing. I should have should read it more properly.
Excellent.
Thank you.